Breaking tonight, you're looking live at Joint Base Andrews, where President Trump arrived on Air Force One just moments ago after wrapping up his first overseas trip. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. President Trump has wrapped up his intense 9-day overseas international voyage that by all accounts was a home run. Our commander-in-chief, the pillar of strength and a true advocate for America. His message, clear and unequivocal. There was no apology, no wimpish behavior, and no bowing down to other leaders. But instead, strength, honor, and determination. There was no effort to convey or insinuate that the American way of life is the one and only right way to live. President Trump boldly went where no other president has, managing to get 50 Muslim leaders in one room with an overarching plan to combat terrorism, cut their financing, and drive them out. A president drawing a real line in the sand and then focusing how even different countries and cultures can actually work together on a common goal to defeat the extremist perversion of Islam, the one determined to kill the rest of us. There's no phony coalition with make-believe numbers. Instead, allies, especially those because they are Muslim, who understand the lethality of Islamist ideology, who now believe in the power and the promise of our president's words. In fact, just yesterday, Egyptian President al-Sisi called upon the United States to help Egypt crush the terrorists who intentionally targeted and massacred Coptic Christians on their way to church. Today, another ally, Italy, begging for the United States to help deal with the expected migration of 200,000 from North Africa by boat before year's end, many from Libya. Yes, our allies are convinced that America is back with a president who actually means what he says and says what he means. But the president has one problem that he has to fix. And in spite of these historic successes, like flying directly from Saudi Arabia to Israel and meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and then immediately meeting Palestinian President Abbas, both of them saying they're willing to work toward the pursuit of peace with each other. And our dearest ally, Israel, now convinced we have her back. Yet the president still has that one problem he needs to fix. And while the leaders of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism gave him receptions unlike anything we have seen in the last 8 years, it took an outsider to reset relations in the Middle East. And for the first time, there is actual hope that we, all of us who believe in God, are partners against a common evil, radical Islam, and a common foe, Iran. And instead of appeasing the enemy with apologies and money, our president stood shoulder to shoulder with leaders, many of whom could not be more fundamentally different. But the president in coming home still has one huge problem. And it's not Russia. It's not the Democrats. It's not any of his haters. And if he doesn't fix this problem, we are in big trouble. What is it? The leaks. Yes, leaks. There is a leaker in the White House. There is a traitor inside the people's house. A traitor who must be taken out. That person is an enemy of the United States. That person doing enormous damage, not just to the president, who is certainly capable of taking care of himself, but instead to our nation. And the media, instead of focusing on children massacred from Manchester to Egypt, are in a breathless frenzy awaiting another late-day leak, going from innuendo and non-stories and even publishing classified information. Some actually saying, where there's smoke, there must be fire, isn't there? To the point where even Watergate reporter Bob Woodward is telling them to chill the hell out. Quote, we aren't even close to Watergate. This leaker needs to be found immediately. No holds barred. Now, I have my own ideas who that person is, but I'm not ready to share them yet. Right now, tonight, spare no resources, spare no one. Find that person or persons, the traitors, the leakers, the ones who are destroying our nation. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And you can see the president just getting off of Air Force One in the United States. And joining me now live from our nation's capital, his deputy assistant of the United States, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. All right, good evening, Doctor. As you look at the president and the first lady getting off Air Force One and now apparently, I believe, getting on to a helicopter to the White House, what do you think the implications of this 9-day trip have been and will be for the United States?
Well, Judge, you remember that fake reset, that plastic switch that Hillary gave Lavrov and with the mistranslated label? Well, forget that. This is the real global reset. The president in just 10 days has changed the geopolitical reality wherever he went, whether it was Europe, whether it was the Middle East, whether it was NATO headquarters, the Wailing Wall. He has changed it. American leadership is back. We're not going to preach to people. We're not going to lecture. We're not going to make apologies for who we are. We are here to obliterate ISIS. We're here to reassure our friends, especially Israel, and we are here to send a very clear message to our enemies, Iran included. That is what the president did in a scant week and a half.
And yet it seems that in that scant week and a half, the president brought together, as I said in my open, 50 Muslim leaders in one place. The respect, the ceremony, it's very telling as to how they are accepting him versus how they accepted the other president.
Because they treat him as a true leader. They recognize him for who he is. He gave them tough love. Let's be honest, Judge. He gave them tough love. He said to the 50-plus leaders, look, you have to drive the extremists. You have to drive the terrorists out of your places of worship, out of your communities, because we are in a war between good and evil. At the same time, he reassured them that, look, I'm not just going to sign a $110 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia. I'm going to call out Iran. I'm going to call out its destabilizing influence on the region. So wherever he went, it was substantive, but it was the same message that the Marine Corps division that supplied Secretary Kelly and Secretary Mattis to this administration. It's the same motto: no better friend, no worse enemy.
And as we go west, as he went west, discussing a meeting with the NATO leaders, he made it very clear: we're gonna stay in NATO, but you know what? You got to pay up. What do you think the reaction to that is going to be?
Well, look, I've heard very, very positive things from people who actually have to secure those nations, so our NATO allies. But just think about the simple logic of it, Judge. Imagine if you're a member of a club and 80% of the members of the club only paid half of the dues they're supposed to pay. Would you like that? Would you be satisfied with that?
Of course not. Dr. Gorka, I mean, everybody knows that people have to pay their fair share.
Well, you would think so.
Well, the question is, to what extent can we force them to do that?
Well, I think the message was sent, and the Secretary General, if you remember, here in D.C., he reaffirmed this need for equitable burden sharing. Because remember, an alliance only works if everybody steps up to the plate and shows seriousness. We want our allies to be as serious as we are, and I think that message was received in Brussels.
Yes, and of course you're referring to NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. He absolutely agreed. And let's keep going west. Manchester this week. What did the Brits miss? What happens now with the United States and our ally, the UK?
Well, the issue is both a policy question and a tactical one. On the tactical side, it's the question of manpower. When you've got hundreds or perhaps thousands of people that have come back from those war zones and you don't know what they're planning, you don't know what they're doing, you need to surveil them, okay? It takes 20 to 30 people to physically surveil one suspect. You know that. So there's this tactical question. There's this tactical question of manpower. But there's a bigger issue. But what do you do if your citizen goes to Syria or Libya? They're not going there to get a suntan. And what happens when they come back home? These nations have to decide, what are you going to do with that person? Interview them, and if they don't say I'm building a bomb, then that's okay, you don't do anything. This is the challenge for Europe. They're so much closer to those war zones. This is what they have to deal with now. A decision has to be made, and it's like the executive order we had here. We are concerned with people coming from those war zones. That's why the president signed those executive orders.
And, you know, when you talk about people, maybe refugees or individuals in the UK or let's keep the United States separate. They go back to Syria. They go to Libya. They go to these other countries. Do these other countries that they want to go back to, like the UK, do they have to accept them if they're a refugee? Do they have the capability of even knowing that they went to these other places? Or do we just rely on everyone's word? And you know as well as I do, a jihadist is trained to lie.
Well, there are some nations, I'm not going to mention them, that when that individual comes back from that place where you don't go for a holiday, they sit down with them at the airport for hours and they interrogate them. And they tell them, look, we know where you came from and we know what you've been doing. And we know that you, well, you should know we've got our eye on you. That's what some nations do. The question is everybody prepared to take the hard measures and to invest in human intelligence, in the undercover assets that can keep these people on the radar screen long before they buy the ingredients for that bomb, Judge?
All right, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Judge.
And joining me now, Muslim scholar and author of In the Land of Invisible Women, a female doctor's journey into the Saudi kingdom, Dr. Kanta Ahmed. All right, doctor, going on what Dr. Gorka was talking about, you know, having the resources sufficient to identify those who have been brought into countries like the UK as maybe a refugee, and then tracking them and how we do that.
Both Egypt and Manchester represent Islamist ideology at work. One, war against secularism in Manchester, killing children at a music concert. One, striking Coptic Christians that Islamists see as infidels. Both are originating from this ideology, but also from the region of Libya, while the entire world, including the United States' eyes has been on the mass migration of Syrians fleeing the civil war. We've forgotten about the failed state that has been left behind in Libya. And actually, Dr. Gorka's points are well taken. The tragedy is that British intelligence, domestic intelligence, MI5, was very informed and involved with British Libyans in Manchester, the largest community of Libyans outside of Libya in the world.
In Manchester?
Well known to the British authorities. They knew Islamists were there, and they were traveling back and forth during the Arab Spring to help overthrow Gaddafi, not recognizing that this is a beast or an ideology, exactly, that could come back and bite you. That's really the sad part of the story.
But when we talk about intelligence, the MI5 is very, very good, very competent.
Of course.
They missed this.
I think they didn't miss the facts or the movements, but they might have not considered this potential scenario. Many of the Libyans in Manchester are extremely well integrated, are absolutely devastated at what's happened, and many secular Libyans, themselves British, that were going back to Libya, had warned British authorities that radicals are developing. But putting two and two together is more difficult than it might seem from here.
You know, it seems as though countries like the United States and UK, although, you know, we may have an instinct or a gut feeling, as I used to say when I was a DA, I have a gut feeling, I just had to get the evidence behind it, that we are limited because we are free societies, that we can almost predict something going wrong, and yet our laws don't allow us to do what we need to do.
I think some of the keenest remarks have come out of the British Muslim community this last week. And they're also saying there's a generational difference. Many of the older British Libyans absolutely invested in British and Manchester life. But somehow, when their youth went back to participate in the Arab Spring or overthrow Gaddafi, they became brutalized, traumatized, radicalized, and they bond not just literally with their co-fighters, but through the internet and ideologically. We do have incredible technology. Professor at Dartmouth University, we can do photo DNA technology of jihadist ideology videos and see who's watching them, what's the content. We can follow them in the virtual space too.
But the most frightening part of it is that, you know, when you talk about an older Libyan, for example, you know, that the older Muslims in Manchester that you referred to are assimilating and believe in the UK or the Western, whatever country they're in. Yet, in spite of their being raised by them, the younger generation seems to be more connected to, you know, their peers who may be jihadists.
Yes, and in fact, it's leaders within MI5 have said this enthrall not just of ISIS, but of Al-Qaeda and earlier the Taliban is consuming these individuals to become part of a virtual organization that they can connect with much more than their family or friends or neighbors. And solving that, I'm really not certain how we're going to be able to do it. I think we're facing now, with Libya, 180 miles of coastline controlled by ISIS. It's a stone's throw from Italy. Over 500,000 individuals from Africa coming to Europe. It's not only a human marketplace in human trafficking, weapons coming into Egypt. I think we're going to need Western military intervention in Libya to protect Egypt, which has destroyed 1,000 SUVs in the last couple of years, coming in from Libya into Egypt with arms and militants.
Well, it appears that President al-Sisi understands the commitment of our President Trump, something that he did not get from President Obama, but instead Morsi, the Muslim brother, got from
And having
Obama.
just traveled to Egypt, I've seen not just the commitment of the government, but the ordinary Egyptians refuse to be divided into Christian and Muslim.
Good.
It's Muslim soldiers that are protecting Christian churches. And we have a Muslim Egyptian president who took military strikes on a Libyan bases hours after the killing of Christian citizens in his country.
Well, we're certainly grateful to have your input, Doctor. Thank you for being with us tonight. And coming up, more on President Trump's historic trip abroad. Our panel is standing by. But first, one of the most outspoken conservatives in the UK is here to react to the Manchester attack. And later, I roll up my sleeves and kick off my heels as I board the USS Kearsarge for Fleet Week in New York City. Watch what happened when I walked in on a martial arts training session on the big ship.
Here we go.
Jesus. That was a throwdown. Street Week, Fleet Week style, Street Justice Fleet Week style, as we rolled on.
The barbaric attack in Manchester and the massacre of innocent young lives underscores the depth of the evil we face and the urgent need for us to join forces to absolutely and totally defeat it.
That's President Trump today speaking about the horrific terror attack in Manchester in his final speech abroad. Earlier, I spoke with Daily Mail online columnist and conservative commentator Katie Hopkins about that attack and the Liberals' response abroad. Take a look. Katie Hopkins, thanks so much for joining us this evening. First of all, tell us the condition of some of the victims of the Manchester attack. How are they?
Yeah, so it's obviously been a terrible time here in the UK. 22 dead. That number may still rise, and there are still 5 children under the age of 16 critical in hospital, and it's not known whether they will make it or not. So as much as things are starting to get back to normal as much as we've started again on the political campaign for the election. Certainly there are still terrible stories to be told, still parents waiting by the bedside of their children to get better. And we're also here in the UK right now just about to go into half-term break, so a break for the school. And I've got lots of emails coming in from people wondering, you know, should they go to this concert? Should they go on a holiday? Someone I know that was coming up to London for a weekend with their children has just cancelled their trip. So this kind of fear is all pervasive.
You are known as a conservative writer. You had your own radio show every Sunday, a national radio show from 10 to 12, very popular. And reports are you no longer have that show. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, well, actually, I can have no comment. It's been agreed. I have no comment on my leaving of my radio show. But I think if we were to generalise and talk more generally about what we see happening, I think after any attack like this, look, there is huge anger, there is huge outrage, there's an overwhelming feeling of anger. People don't quite know where to put that anger, and I think certainly with the Liberal left, they never quite look at themselves and wonder if they are part of the problem. They will load that anger onto someone else.
So you believe that they have done that to you, Katie?
Well, I think there is a silencing that goes on the right. I wouldn't speak about my own case in particular, but I think in general we see very much a division between the Liberal left and the right. The right are calling for action. We want these people who threaten us taken off our streets. There are 3,000 people out there on the watch list that are being watched, but yet they're still free to roam around. There's 650 jihadis that have come back from Libya and the Middle East, still free, roaming around our country. And I think a lot of us on the right, in the Conservative majority, we feel like we want those people incarcerated. We keep hearing they were known to authorities. We'd like them to be known to incarceration.
Okay, you know, the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, has basically blamed the United Kingdom for this attack, saying that it's the United Kingdom's policies. Is this reflective of how people feel in the UK?
I don't think it's reflective of how many of us feel. I think it's quite insulting to be in an area where he relaunched his campaign today, or at least got started on the election campaign. There's been a pause for 3 days after the terror attack, and he came back linking directly foreign policy overseas with terrorist action here in the UK. Now, of course, many of us would say there must be a clear link, you know, because we operate over in the Middle East. There is an
But isn't that
impact here in the
placing
UK.
blame on the victims?
Yeah, the thing I would say about it is the timing is horrible. It's not what we want to hear right now. And I would say there is also another side to this. You know, we are looking to our leaders right now for answers. We're all kind of hoping someone's going to tell us the cure. We are sick as a society, and we're looking for a doctor almost that's going to tell us how they're going to make it better. So people are looking at Corbyn, wondering, the leader of the left, how will he make this better? And he stood up there and said, we've brought this on ourselves.
Katie Hopkins, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you very much indeed.
Our panel up next, and still ahead.
Too little? The captain gets up in the captain's chair.
I can't sit in it? They're never going to let me on this ship again, you know that. For Fleet Week.
Canceled because what it says is a, quote, major IT system failure. BA's problems are causing misery for tens of thousands of travelers on a key holiday weekend in Britain. Long lines are reported at counters. The airline's website and mobile app are also down and creating problems for the airline's call centers. Protesters continue to clash with police in Venezuela's capital. Officers are using water cannons and tear gas on the demonstrators. At least 55 protesters have been killed since the demonstration started about 7 weeks ago. Over 1,000 people have been injured and more than 2,700 have been arrested. The protesters want Venezuela's president to leave office. I'm Laura Engel. Now back to Justice.
From Saudi Arabia to Israel, to NATO, to the G7, we made extraordinary gains on this historic trip to advance the security and prosperity of the United States, our friends, and our allies. And we paved the way for a new era of cooperation among the nations of the world to defeat the common enemy of terrorism and provide our children with a much more hopeful future.
Welcome back to Justice. A lot to talk about. Let's bring in our panel. Joining me now, host on the Blaze TV and radio, Lawrence Jones. Also here, former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, syndicated radio host Chris Hahn. Good evening to you both.
Hey, Judge.
All right. Now, you just heard the president. I'm going to start with you, Lawrence. The president saying, you know, from Saudi Arabia to Israel, NATO, G7, advances in security. I mean, does this seem to you like an almost perfect trip? I mean, there wasn't one flaw in the whole trip.
Well, I'm excited about it because first he started off with Saudi Arabia. We're giving you weapons to defeat terrorism, to go after ISIS. So it's about time that you guys start assisting us with it. And then you have NATO, him addressing NATO. You guys need to stop being leeches and start paying your fair share. The American people sent Donald Trump there to get them in order. We shouldn't have to pay for all this stuff. So now you're going to see America take its place back in the world.
And Chris, your reaction to the trip?
Well, you know, first he goes to Saudi Arabia and he doesn't say radical Islamic terrorism. I thought that that was all you had to do was just say that and it would disappear. That's what he said on the campaign trail. Well, he didn't say it to the Islamist people who were in that room, did he? And that's
he told them to get their ideology in order.
Very easy to say it at a rally in Alabama. Very different to say it at a conference.
Let me ask you a question, Chris. When I ask you about the president's international trip, was it a success? You want to talk about one line? Are you kidding?
I don't think it was a success, Judge.
Why wasn't it a success? Tell me why.
Well, you know, he told the leaders of the Muslim world that he wouldn't preach to them about how they should treat women and other people in their society. And then he treated our NATO allies like they were our enemies. And that is very disturbing to me.
What makes you think, okay, Lawrence, I'll let you answer it. I'm not going to fight with Chris.
How? Because he told NATO that they need to pay their fair share while they giggled on the sideline because they want to be leeches? That was somehow wrong?
You know what? There's a time and a place to do that, and at a memorial to Article 5 and 9/11, at a memorial to 9/11 and Article 5, that was not the time nor the place. I agree with the president. They should pay their fair share, but there's a time and a place.
Okay, so what's the big deal?
Should he do it behind closed doors, Chris? Behind closed doors?
Absolutely.
Maybe you got to embarrass them into paying, but that's just me.
Yeah, I don't think that works. That's not how diplomacy works, Judge.
Well, no, they're already starting to pay. Once he got elected, they got it. Look, this is a team. Everybody pays their way, but enough of that.
That's right.
Lawrence, let me ask you, in terms of what happened in Manchester and Egypt and Afghanistan, we've got like 4 attacks this week. What do you think the American president can do for the Middle East? Do you think that we now have allies who believe in us?
We have allies that believe in us, but the president sent a message to them that they need to get their ideology in order. Let's be honest. This president has talked about radical Islam. And now that we've given these people the tools to fight terrorism, the president also said, hey, you got to get your religion in order. If this is going to be nations of Islam, Muslim nations, then you need to confront it. And that's what we're going to see. If they decide to get with the program and do it, then we'll have a relationship. If they don't, then you can expect a different response from this president.
Well, it seems like he already decided that Saudi Arabia would get $1.2 billion worth of weapons from us. And, of course, he took a generous contribution to his daughter's foundation in the process.
For them. Did you hear that?
Sure.
They paid for them.
And then there was a beautiful $100 million gift to Ivanka's charity. Now, if this was Hillary Clinton taking it to the Clinton Foundation right now, we'd be having a very different conversation.
Wait a minute.
Here we go.
You know what? I got to tell you. So then let me ask you something. Why did they stop giving money to Hillary Clinton's charity? Could it be because they don't want to pay because there is no play?
Well, now they're giving it to Ivanka Trump's charity, so I guess we know the answer to that.
No, that's not the case. Lawrence, last word, real fast.
One good...
Lawrence, last word.
Well, all I have to say is that we see a new commander-in-chief. He's taking command. He's telling these people to get the religion in order. He actually can say radical Islam. The only reason why it was a problem with Barack Obama because he never said it. He never said it during the campaign. We know what this president stands on.
Say it to their face if you're so tough.
Thank you, gentlemen. Up next, I'm joined by a fashion expert as we take a look into the First Lady's fashion. Justice is back in a moment. Welcome back to Justice. I want to make a correction. Chris Hahn in the last block suggested $100 million went from Saudi Arabia to Ivanka Trump's charity. That is absolutely incorrect. That $100 million from the Saudis is going into a program that involves the Women Entrepreneur Fund, and that is going to be run by the World Bank, not Ivanka Trump, and it female entrepreneurs with financial support in the Middle East. This is to help women in the Middle East, having nothing to do with Ivanka. I needed to correct that. Meanwhile, earlier I spoke with the president and proprietor of Cherabona La Petite Robe, Anthony Vecchione, who joined me to talk about all things FLOTUS fashion. Take a look. Anthony, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so here's the First Lady just completing her visit, first international visit, and there used to be like this breathless anticipation of what First Ladies would wear. Although she's extremely elegant, or so it appears, there's not a lot of talk in the fashion world about it, is there?
No, in fact, there's not. In fact, what they should be doing right now is praising our First Lady for how beautiful and how chic she's representing our country in these beautiful designers that she's chosen from all over the world.
And here she is in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh, just coming off the plane and wearing...
Actually, she's got the Stella McCartney jumpsuit on.
All right, and the belt?
The belt is a magnificent gold Saint Laurent python leather.
All right, and then it seems that she respects the cultures, and for the first dinner in Saudi Arabia, she's wearing a dress designed by Lebanese designer Reem Akra, this raspberry. What do you think of that?
It's exquisite. I mean, first of all, the woman looks like a statuesque. As I said, she floats. She's so beautiful. And she's completely covered up, and she's given respect to the culture. From what I've read in the press, the Saudi Arabians really appreciated her style and her conservatism.
Okay, and here she is. It almost looks like a safari outfit with the brown leather belt. Again, kind of a desert safari look.
She has got her own sense of style. And I think that's so wonderful about this, our First Lady, is that she's capable of creating a look for the mood and the environment that she's in.
And I believe after that, another Reem Akra, the Lebanese designer, this powder blue caftan.
Exquisite. I mean, it's really breathtaking. The color is just perfect. She's floating with the...
Yeah, you're the one who said she floats.
She does float because she just manages to use the right fabrications to go with her body and complement her shapes. And she's just really a beautiful woman.
Yeah. And then, of course, she goes to Israel. And what is she wearing here?
This is a Michael Kors super chic suit. I mean, this is like so perfect for Israel. It's crisp, it's elegant, it's tailored, it's feminine, yet it's still very chic.
And it's respectful.
Respectful and chic.
Not everyone can wear a belt that thick, but let's keep moving. Here is another dress at the home of Benjamin Netanyahu for dinner.
This is certainly a Dolce & Gabbana black dress, okay, for dinner. Exquisite. And I think of all the designers, Dolce & Gabbana is probably the only designer that's paying respect for the First Lady, honoring them while they're on this world trip.
And then here she is again with Ivanka, who looks stunning as well. Do you know what she's wearing here, again in Israel?
Again, here we go. She's now chosen a designer from the UK called Roxana. So she's managed to get a real,
like an international.
Yeah, to represent this trip that she's on.
UK, America, Lebanon, Italy. Okay, what is she wearing here?
This is, again, she's decided to continue, which is also always a great move for her, a Dolce & Gabbana coat. Okay. She has an amazing figure, so it's in her best benefit. It's in her best benefit to highlight her waistline.
Okay, now let's talk about the Vatican.
This, she truly must have been briefed by the Vatican.
Why?
Because I think that she has truly respected the full-on culture of what it takes
with the mantilla?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that she really, I mean, the Pope is probably one of the highest figures, one of the highest leaders in the world in his own right. And she's showing the ultimate respect, as Ivanka is here as well.
In a Dolce? She's in a Dolce, again.
No one does this look better than Dolce. Let me put it out
especially in Italy. And speaking of Melania, Dolce & Gabbana, the other fashionable First Lady, Jackie Kennedy. Compare them.
Well, Firstly, I actually do compare them because I think Melania is literally as elegant and as chic as Jacqueline Kennedy was. This particular photo, though, who's for the meeting of the Pope, she must really use these pictures as an inspiration for herself because they're almost identical.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure that she needed that, given the fact that you're going to wear Dolce, you're going to wear Mantilla. There is not a lot of choice, but both of them so elegant.
Very elegant.
Here she is coming off a plane in Belgium.
Again, she's highlighting her waistline. She's wearing this beautiful Michael Kors gingham coat and matching dress.
Okay, how many women can highlight their waistline? I mean, do you have to be really tall to be able to...
Well, it doesn't hurt that she's got this statuesque figure.
But how about for the rest of us?
Well, I wouldn't want to... We can't categorize everybody, but I do believe that in Melania's particular case, she knows what to accentuate on herself.
Anthony, we'll see what happens when she comes back. And now that she's going to be in the White House, we'll be able to see her a lot more.
But I guarantee, though, everybody should be paying notice to her because she has literally taken the fashion industry by storm, and she has represented an industry that should be paying high respect to her.
All right. Anthony Vecchione, La Petite Robe, thank you for being with us again.
Thank you so much, Judge. It was a pleasure.
Street justice is next, but it's really fleet justice. You're going to want to see this, trust me.